So when we left off, a user by the name of owheydusoapsk was just getting into what he felt was my non-evidence, which was the New Yorker article, links down in the underbar, of course. Excuse me. He's about to try to say that this proves nothing, that this isn't what I said it was. But again, if you watch my original video, and if you watch my video response to his response to my original video, I think I make my point quite clear. And if any of you actually take the time to read this 8-page article, you would understand that this is exactly as I've described it. But I'll let this user have his say.
Contacted on the internet a underage, who he thought was an underage female, and set up a sexual liaison with her, and actually went, and then he was it was a sting, and he was caught up in that.
Oh, it was a sting. But again, the fact that you're putting in the word sexual liaison when at best most of what was talked about was they had just set up a meeting, a picnic. Maybe it was going to get sexual, but it wasn't something that this person was necessarily pushing for. But again, read the article for one's own self. Make up one's own mind. This is the problem that I have with shows like To Catch a Predator, because it gets into our head that necessarily showing up is demonstration of intent. And that these sort of folk, if somebody else hadn't been there, would have automatically committed a crime. That adults and teenagers, for instance, at the very least, can't be friends on any level. How many broken homes are there out there where maybe a little girl or a little boy really desperately needs a fatherly figure in his life, and mom doesn't really have much of that? Someone who will play with the child appropriately. Not somebody who's obviously going to have a sexual relationship with the child, but a lot of my point about trying to explore the nature of what pedophilia is through facts, not fiction, has been trying to get people to realize exactly what this is, a sexuality. That some of these people, and I'm not defending adult teenage or adult-child relations. I want to make this extremely clear, because this point seems to be getting buried in all of this. Not that I'm saying that this user has said that now, but it was a point that I didn't quite get to in the last video response. The video responses before the beginning of this one here. But comparing somebody wanting to treat a child as a cum dumpster, for lack of a better term, versus somebody who wants to have actual romantic entanglements with a teenager or a child, I'd rather they actually cared, by and large, for the people that they want to interact with than people who just treat them as a cum dumpster, for lack of a better term, a receptacle for their sperm, a way to get off. Because, again, part of the point of this series that you seem to be missing, and that you're saying is a well-founded fear, is that we think that all pedophiles ever want to do is rape children and treat children as cum dumpsters, rather than looking at what their actual interests are. Not that we can let them indulge in that, obviously, as stated I don't know how many times. It doesn't matter that this is a sexuality. It's not discrimination against a person to say that they cannot indulge in their sexuality in the ways that they would want to indulge into it, especially if they're into infants, if they're infantophiles, who are people who like babies, and and people who like 5, 6, 7, 9, 10-year-olds. This would not be healthy for any party involved, and because sexual contact between the adults and the child is a demonstrable harm, obviously, there's no way that we could let them what do you call it, indulge in their sexuality. It's damaging to at least one party, and it's not good for the other party to indulge in. That doesn't mean that these people don't have means by which to maintain themselves. It does not mean that these people don't have means by which to take care of themselves, and it certainly doesn't mean that these people somehow don't have morality. And I've been trying to break the conflation that these people are monsters, because I'm dealing with people sometimes on a daily basis who are telling me that if their son was a sex offender, who they conflate with child molester / pedophile, that they would either disown their child or they would kill their child. Can you honestly tell me how that's beneficial to the child and how that prevents first offenses or reoffenses? Because if we're going to treat somebody like a monster, and then act surprised when they actually act out as a monster, then how can we act as if we're not culpable as a society, as a social bubble here and there for creating a self-fulfilling prophecy? Not that I'm saying that it's ever okay if a pedophile acts on his urges, even if he's being discriminated against. I'm simply trying to promote the idea that this ideas that we have, these hair trigger ideas that we have, are harmful towards our goal of reduction of first offenses. Because we can bring the levels down. We can never get them to 0, but we could bring them to a reasonable level. It's unrealistic to think that we're ever going to bring them down to 0. But I've gone off on a bit of a tangent, and I apologize, but I want to make some points very, very clear as to why I said what I've said and where that's coming from.
That's different from simply having the thought of a contact with an underage girl and being arrested and forced to admit to having that thought. He took some actions there, so that article doesn't support your claim. And then finally...
How does it not support my claim? They want him to either admit to a crime or admit to feelings that the soldier himself doesn't have. Or did you gloss over that? I believe it's page 2 where he starts talking about how he's being treated in civil confinement. And so his choices are admit to something that he's either not or that he has no interest in, get treatment for that, and maybe be paroled. Maybe. Again, decade-long program, only 2 people have ever successfully been brought out of this program here. Tell me that's not taking away somebody's rights. Tell me that's not trying to force somebody into admitting to a crime that they have not or would not commit based off of the idea of future crime and what they demonstrate. You don't seem to even address my issues about the plythismegraph, which further supports my talking points here. When we have a demonization, when we have this idea in our head that these people are all dangerous, no exceptions, we create these programs that do take away a person's rights, that takes away their person's freedoms. And this article is one of many that I have in my series that support my points. I'm not going to keep dragging out my links if you're not going to bother to read them, if you're not going to bother to look through them.
You said in your video that civil rights of non-offending pedophiles have been taken away.
Where did I say that? Please quote for me where I've said this. See, this is straw manning. But where it gets to be an issue is the fact that it's the people who may even become, through rehabilitation, non-offending pedophiles, who are told who they can marry, where they can live, where they can work. They have troubles with having their address posted. They have people who get harassed. Did you not even read my I Love a Sex Offender blog? Did you not even watch any of the videos of the lady who is laying out in black and white terms and even talking to law enforcement agents who are enforcing things like the Adam Walsh Act and other acts that, as the U.S. Human Rights Watch link demonstrates, aren't people who are actually, lays out how these acts have failed, how these laws have failed. And even if the person poses no threat, they're still being punished over and over and over again for the same crime. And you say to me that somehow that's not. But as far as non-offending pedophiles, nothing. But the stigma makes it to where people have very few choices. They're oftentimes backed against the wall. You're supporting the stigma, you're supporting the idea, or at least your original response to me was supporting the idea, supporting the stigma that these people need to either suffer in silence or commit an act. Because it's difficult, if not at times darn near impossible, to simply just come out and then go seek treatment. And then when I've talked about the flaws in a lot of the treatment programs that prognose a one-size-fits-all prognosis when it comes to pedophiles and pedophilia, whether they've ever committed an act or not. And they don't treat some of the underlying causes that actually cause somebody to offend and possibly be classified as a pedophile under the DSM-4 before the DSM-5 has even come out. Watch my series, because if this is all this is going to be about, I thank you for being civil about this, but at the same time, you're not reading the links, at least not in full. I'm not going to say that I think that you're doing it on purpose, because again, I do believe you, I'm willing to believe you are willing to be shown, like the great skeptic James Randi is often quoted as saying. Or else I wouldn't even bother to respond to you. But please, ask me about talking points I've actually made. Please don't infer or put words in my mouth that I never said, and try to make a case that I have not made, or that Varmint Coyote has not made. None of this is about allowing people to be child pornographers. None of this is about allowing people to molest things. And you mentioned in one of your videos that we shouldn't let pedophiles be kindergarten teachers. But when I talked about female pedophiles, the thing that you said is not swept under the rug, that's exactly what we are doing. And they can be more subversive than men are, which is why the anti-male hysteria when it comes to pedophilia and the scare that we have there makes little to no sense and works against our shared goal of reduced first offenses and recidivism. As is the treatment programs in a lot of these places, works against our goals of reduced recidivism. There was one more point that I wanted to make on that exact topic, and dang it, it's just not coming to mind. Sorry, my brain isn't fully woken up at this point in time here. Oh yes. But see, here's the thing. This is why I keep trying to talk about how we have to keep our terms straight. When you say we shouldn't put pedophiles in charge of a kindergarten class, what you're actually saying is we shouldn't put child molesters in charge of a kindergarten class. And absolutely, you have no disagreement with me on that whatsoever. But that's the entire point of the series. When you conflate that pedophiles are child molesters, no exceptions, not that I'm saying you have specifically, I'm just trying to say, and say that there's a well-founded fear there, this is why my series on my channel, my playlist on my channel page exists. It's for educational purposes. It's for people to understand exactly what this is so we can have a meaningful conversation about what social and law changes need to be taken into effect so that we can have scalpel laws where a hammer is currently being applied. You didn't seem to care about the collateral damage that I've demonstrated through the links like I Love a Sex Offender, as well as the Human Rights Watch article down in the underbar for the umpteenth time, and many others that I've presented here. We're too proactive about something that we, by and large, know virtually nothing about. And when we have such poor numbers for female sex offenders because they don't get studied by scientific research projects there, and then you tell me that it's not swept under the rug or treated in an offhanded manner there. You're going to have to do better than that. Hopefully this answers your questions.